do you have a best or funniest interaction with a member of the Celtics organization that you can think of?
Oof.
And plus, share.
What was the second part of that?
And if you're willing to share it, if it's a as long if you have a memory, I guess, with someone.
Yeah, I had a moment. We've all had our gaffes at the the podium post game, for example, asking questions, and I had one this year. My memory might be a little bit fuzzy on this, but this is all easy to fact check here. So basically, I knew that we were getting Jason Tatum and Derek White at the podium. I unfortunately can't remember who they were playing that night. I knew we were getting them, and I was so in my own world with writing and then how I wanted to ask Jason a particular question that him and Derek ended up doing the podium together, which almost never happens. And a part of my question that I didn't think to edit in real time was about how he references all the time. He's told me one-on-one, he says it in public, that his favorite teammate is Al Horford. He said it countless times. And I started the question with Derek right there of, my question was about Al Horford. And, Jason, you said it's your favorite teammate. Derek shoots him a look immediately like, et tu, Brutus. Jason starts cracking up. And then, it became a little bit of a thing on social media. So that was my bad right there, that I was so focused on the question and phrasing it properly that I didn't even think of, hey, Derek is right next to him and you're calling someone else his favorite teammate.
Now, bringing up the players on the Boston Celtics, looking at every single player on the Celtics roster, or even the coaching staff as well, you've interviewed a lot of them. We asked Cam when he was on here the other day, who was kind of the most tightly sealed Celtic out there? Who's really the player or coach? We talked about coaches too. Who's the player or coach out there that is just impossible to mine anything good from within an interview, whether it's one-on-one or at the podium? Who's just really tight, locked, sealed, not giving out anything to the media? Who's hard to interview on the Celtics?
Okay, I want to set the precedent that when you ask this question moving forward, you phrase it differently to everyone else after me. So this is going to start post this answer. When you include the coach, Joe Mazzulla is definitely someone who will be tight-lipped. I mean, there's times where he talks about not knowing the injury report only to be informed by us and members of the PR team that it's already gone public and we're aware of it. And there's times where he looks at members of the PR team like, hey, do you want to field this question about the injury report? So Joe, he doesn't want to give away strategy when it comes to injuries. I actually think it's very thoughtful, but he doesn't want to put something out there that either the player himself who's dealing with it wouldn't want out there or wouldn't phrase it that way in that spirit. So it is from a place of certainly consideration and well-intentioned, but Joe Mazzulla, certainly from the Celtics, from my vantage point, is the most tight-lipped, but that's also an easy out. So when you ask the next person who comes on, remove coaches from that and stick to just players.
It's called just outside of Joe Mazzulla. Just outside of Joe Mazzulla. Because also
Exactly.
another question in regard to that is, how many coaches do you actually have access to on the Celtics bench outside of Joe?
I think that's on the reporter to build those relationships. It's not like we're getting Sam Cassell at the podium, for instance, or in a scrum even. So I think that is on the individual to be able to build those relationships.
So that's essentially why it's harder for the assistant coaches to actually be known by the media and by the public, is most of their interviews come probably from a one-on-one setting. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're referring to there stems on both sides, coaches too, and assistant general managers, people on different rungs of a front office. It's on the reporter and those individuals I just referenced in positions like that to advocate for themselves. And so you can't just sit back and go through the motions of your day to day. You need to go out of your way and get comfortable, even if you're not building those relationships.
Now that kind of, we're also on the subject here, and we kind of went more of a direction in keeping the lid on words when it comes to the podium. But really, we know from a content creation standpoint that we love good quotes. We love great quotes out of players and coaches. But out of the players, right? Let's throw out Joe Mazzulla here. Out of the players, who actually gives the best answers on the Boston Celtics, and who can you always rely on to really give you good content at the podium every single time?
There's two. And I think for volume, Jaylen Brown has to be the number one answer there. He's always good for multiple really good quotes. And I mean, even when I wasn't covering the team, since he first came on my radar, I've just been impressed by Jaylen Brown, the person, and his mentality, the way he carries himself, his follow through. So to me, you get him on a podium, for example, or even in a scrum. Some players, for example, are not as comfortable in that setting where there's a throng of media and they're throwing questions at you, and some people are louder than others and they're trying to talk over people and whatnot. But in any setting I've seen Jaylen Brown, he's just been comfortable with who he is, and you ask him a question, he's going to give you an honest answer to how he feels about that particular topic, and usually comes away with something where you go, okay, there's a lot of quotes here that people are going to be really interested to hear this thought from Jaylen Brown. And the second one, for a different reason, is Luke Cornett, who's just comedic gold most of the time. So he's not up there nearly as often as Jaylen, but he delivers pretty much every time.
That was the answer I was expecting us to have on this program at some point in time. Luke Cornett, he's like the new age Aaron Baines around here. I mean, really, every single interview he gives, it feels like he's giving out something to the public every single time, whether it's with Abby Chin on the sidelines, even at the podium. That's why I advocate for these Luke Cornett minutes. I mean, really out there, if he scores 18 points, ends up at the podium, we're getting content that night. We're getting content. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I've never seen someone disappointed about a Luke Cornett podium game.
No. Unless we lose, which has happened this year.
So my final media-related question for you is going to be on the topic of Boston sports media from a general perspective. So something that really sticks out to me is JJ Redick went on a radio show here in Boston. I'm not gonna name the radio station, but he went on there and
no promotion over here.
Right, absolutely. No free promotion over here on Celtics Talk Weekly. And when he was talking on there and answering the questions that they gave him, he went back onto his podcast and talked about his interview with these hosts. And he said, if the Celtics win the championship, I don't even know if the fans will be happy, because anytime I listen to media basically in that town, it's just all whining and negativity. So, and from your perspective as a member of the media here in Boston sports, do you think Boston sports media is too negative? Or do you think that they're just good at being the devil's advocate and getting the fans and viewers to understand different perspectives rather than just the regular status quo?
So here's the thing and it's not on anyone to take the time and consideration to properly label these. You know, most things in life, we just want to put in a box and move on. And if that's wrong, we probably aren't invested in enough to slow down and put that energy to really get it right. And maybe it falls into multiple categories or whatever. But there's a glaring difference between how the fans feel about a topic, how a talk radio host presents and discusses a topic on the air, and how a beat, for example, is covering it and discussing it and feels about it. So there's a distinction. You know, Boston media, quite frankly, is too broad of a brush to paint with, given that when you're including a talk show, I won't name any, no free promos, and when you're talking about them, and that, you know, that can be inherently negative. And so I certainly don't blame JJ Redick for coming away from that experience and then saying, I don't know if this is how the fans will feel about it. And he did say, based on what I'm hearing from the media over there, but the way that they talk about it does not necessarily and shouldn't be assumed that it represents the views of anyone from a different line, whether it's the fans or other media members.